Good morning. Today's subject on how to improve listening skills page is all about how to listen to people in pain. And first of all, I want to talk about why it's important, and I'm going to talk about why we find it so hard, and then some simple things that we can do to start to practice and develop our ability to listen to someone who's in pain. So why is it important to do it? Is that part of any change process is that we have some letting go to do. So there's going to be some sadness, there's going to be some anger, there's going to be some frustration, that to create new things in our lives we have to let go of the old. So if you think about decluttering your house, in order to redecorate a room, to have it done, you have to pull everything out, you have to decide to let go of things, you need to change things around. And whether we're consciously aware of it or not, every single change process that happens, if you look at nature, you think about the leaves falling off the trees, and then everything dying back, and then things coming back forward. There's a clearing away of the leaves, there's the getting rid of the weeds. There's always something that we have to let go of. But the brain is hardwired not to do that, because it wants to keep hold of everything that feels like it's going to keep you safe, because familiar means predictability. Predictability means that it can anticipate what's going to happen, and therefore you won't be in danger. So learning how you experience change can help you to recognize when you're in a certain part of your change model, and that can help you to get through those uncomfortable places. I talk about this in terms of being a listener, you being comfortable with being uncomfortable long enough for the change to happen. And the reality is that often we don't listen for long enough because of the fact that we're uncomfortable with the pain. And I've just realised, I'm really ironically, somebody I know has just turned up earlier than we're expected to be here, and so I'm really feeling uncomfortable that I look like I'm talking to myself. So that's an interesting thing that I'm talking about now. So why we need to do it is because everybody goes through pain, and if we haven't got somebody that can listen to us, often what happens is when we're trying to express or experience or acknowledge our emotions in those times, is that we end up suppressing our emotions. So if somebody else can't listen to us, can't honour it, then we keep those emotions inside. And we have to do this often because maybe it's not appropriate in front of our children at that time. You don't want to upset them or distress them. Maybe it's not appropriate for motivation with your team. So it's okay to hold it in for short periods of time, but it's not a good idea to leave it in there all the time. So once we can express it, then it's out. Now, if we don't do that, what happens is we put these emotions on the back burner. We suppress them until eventually one day they bubble over, and they'll either come out as tears, or they'll come out as anger, or they'll come out as coughing or sneezing. So you end up with, you'll be poorly, you might even get upset stomachs, because if those emotions are left inside of us and they have nowhere to they're supposed to be transient and temporary. They're meant to move through us and be released. If we can't release those painful emotions as part of everyday normal changes and transitions, then they get stuck inside of us. So that's why we want to be able to learn to listen to people in pain, is because it's part of any change, and if we don't allow them to express those emotions. So why do we find it so difficult? Well, the number one reason is that the brain is hardwired to want to, for people to be okay, to be safe. And so you will probably fall into one of three categories as a listener. Either you'll be listening to their pain and your brain will go into solution mode, and you'll either want to find a solution. And if you can find a solution, you want to tell them it so you can fix it to make the pain go away. Or you'll get frustrated if you can't find a solution, but you'll still want to move them from problem, that painful situation, into solution mode. Be aware that you may be needing to do that because you are uncomfortable watching somebody be uncomfortable. And all you do is you suppress their emotions in that moment. And you also suppress your own emotions, and so you're both creating this thing where you're going to have this build up of emotions afterwards. So one thing we can do when we're listening to someone in pain is we can go into solution mode, and we try and move them to solution before they're ready, which then results in the same process of actually suppressing their emotions. The second thing is that if you're a very empathetic person, you might start feeling those emotions. So those emotions that are going on, you might start physically feeling it, and so therefore if you don't know how to manage your emotions, you might find yourself like bawling into tears with them, or joining in with it, which from the person who's got the pain, the problem with these two approaches is if you start talking about a solution, they don't feel very heard, because they've got to move their mindset from where they were, from talking about the problem to the solution, because that's what you want, not necessarily what they need. If you start having an emotional reaction and you are starting to feel their pain and you're there with them, at first that can feel quite good because they're not on their own, and it can stop that isolating feeling. But what can happen is it can tip to that they start being worried about you and they want to make you feel better, so then they stop feeling their emotion and therefore they suppress their emotions again. And the last one is that their particular emotion, their story, or whatever they're telling you about, triggers a past memory for you. And so what tends to happen in this point is we then say to them, oh, I remember when that happened to me. Now, all of those three responses, so you try and give them a solution, you're there with them with the pain, or you tell them about an existing situation for you, all of those put the attention from that person you're listening to back to yourself, which means they stop experiencing that emotion in the moment. And the irony of it all is all the time we listen in that way, it means that they don't get to release those emotions. And they don't get to release those emotions, they build up. And the next time you have to listen to them, it will probably take a lot longer. So the moral of the story today is, how to improve why can't we listen to people when they're in pain, is often because it's triggering something inside of us. So the invitation today is, if somebody is in discomfort and they're uncomfortable, just hold that space without giving them a solution, without telling them how you're feeling, or don't telling them about a similar experience for yourself. Just hold that space for longer than you would normally, and just acknowledge how they're feeling right now, that it's okay for them to be angry or upset about whatever, and allow them to have that pain, and then just make a note of how you're feeling yourself. Because the likelihood is, whatever action you're taking that takes you away from simply listening, it's probably to help you manage your own feelings rather than what's beneficial for the other person, because all they will really need in that moment is for you to hold the space, to hear them, to honour them. So Lynn, great to have you watching here. Hopefully when you get back to watch the replay, you can let me know if that was of value to you. So it's really important that we learn to listen to people through pain. It's one of the most challenging things we have to do in life. It's really against our brain's hardwiring. It wants to make sure everyone's happy, but we actually stop people from transitioning through change if we interrupt that process by giving them our opinion, sharing our feelings, or trying to give them a solution. So remember, the moral story is that no matter what the problem, the answer is listening. Have a great day. Speak to you soon.